Okay, I think we're live now. Let me just check once and we can start. Okay, yeah. Uh, I think uh, I think we're live now. I'll just double check. Right. Okay. Uh, Good evening to everyone who is tuned in. Hi, I'm Tia, and today we'll be discussing on the topic of BRICS, along with our distinguished guest for the evening. Allow me to introduce you all to him. Professor Biswajit Dhar is a distinguished professor, Council for Social Development, New Delhi. He has served as professor for a Center for Economic Studies and Planning in the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and also was the Director General of Research and Information System for Developing Countries, a think tank under the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, which specializes on international economic issues. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
So, to begin off with, in your article, you discuss the evolution of BRICS and the takeaways of Jim O'Neill's paper. So, how successful has the BRICS forum been in achieving its goals of reforming the global order to better represent the interests of the South?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Let me just, for the viewers, let me give a brief background that the idea of is initially BRIC, the four countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. This
Mhm.
was proposed by Jim O'Neill in 2001, and basically an investment banker who
Mhm.
who proposed this idea that these four countries are going to become the real drivers of the global economy going forward, and emphasize the significance of these four countries.
Mhm.
Interestingly, the idea caught on at the end of the decade. In 2009, Russia hosted the first BRIC conference, and this was a very interesting juncture for the global economy because we were just coming out of the Great Recession, the steepest downturn since the Great Depression of the 30s, and there was significant restructuring of the global economy taking place at that time. In fact, after almost 3.5 decades, there were serious questions being asked about the whole process of globalization, triggered by the international financial institutions, of course, aided by Washington, and a very different kind of scenario was being perceived, where globalization was being questioned by many. And in that kind of mix comes the whole BRIC summit, and these countries sort of announced the world that they have arrived on the scene, and they are going to be charting out a very different pathway as compared to what the earlier Washington Consensus spoke about. So the aspirations of these countries in various ways, and this came straight from the inequities that they had faced in the financial sector and trade and several others. These were prominently reflected in the declarations that the leaders of these four countries had adopted at the end of their summit meetings. Soon after, South Africa was brought in, and so it's very important because Africa was not really in the mix when you're looking at BRIC. And South Africa was an important player along with Brazil and India in several global forums. So the BRICS, the five countries came together, within the next couple of years, and the initial kind of sort of aspirations were reiterated several times in terms of changing the rules of the game in all the areas that I mentioned. And for the first time, it appeared that there is going to be a very formidable set of countries from the south who would challenge the dominance of the north in global economic governance.
Right. Thank you for laying out the context to us, sir. Um, so, Coming to BRICS interventions in the financial sector, how do you think the BRICS Forum has contributed to reforming the global financial architecture, particularly in terms of challenging the dominance of Western led institutions like the IMF and the World Bank?
Like I said, that this was really the centerpiece of the discussions, because the developing countries had really suffered a great deal uh, uh, from the way the international financial institutions, the Washington-based institutions,
Mhm.
had dominated the global financial scene. And interestingly, soon after the BRICS came into existence,
Right.
these countries started discussing ways in which they would sort of cut the apron strings of the northern institutions.
Mhm.
So they thought of two institutions almost mirroring the fund and the bank, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
Mhm.
So up came the idea of the BRICS Bank, which is now called the New Development Bank,
Right.
and this was perceived as a long-term provider of long-term finance, pretty much like the World Bank does.
Mhm.
And then there was an institution that thought of again mirroring the IMF,
Mhm.
which would address the short-term problems that these countries face. So this was called the contingent reserve arrangement.
Right.
So the BRICS Development Bank took shape rather quickly, I would say. By 2016, the BRICS, the new development bank, was up and running, and it was providing assistance to the developing countries, not just themselves, but the developing countries in a number of important areas like infrastructure, green finance, and sort of helping these countries to benefit from a very different source of finance as compared to the fund and the bank. And of course, these are still early days, and you have to see how much of a real intervention the new development bank is able to make in the area of development finance, because there's a crying need for such institutions from south. Now, let me also mention that when the new development bank was established, this was the first time that developing countries, a group of developing countries, had set up a financial institution of this magnitude. So this was a real, big, huge development in this in you know in the global governance sort of horizon. And as I said, the CRA was supposed to be the lender of last resort for the BRICS countries. Now, CRA is still being it's not still not come into existence. There are pilot runs being conducted by the members, and hopefully in the next few years, before the next uncertainty, global financial uncertainty hits us, and it's going to come one day or the other. The CRA will be up and running, and the BRICS and hopefully other countries don't have to go to the IMF for emergency finance and get caught in all kinds of conditionalities.
That's the hope. Okay, so what specific measures has the BRICS taken to establish these alternative financial institutions? And how do you feel like what impact these institutions have had on promoting financial inclusion and the development, especially in the South?
No, until now it has functioned pretty well. As I said, that only the new development bank, which is mirroring the World Bank, as I mentioned earlier, that is functioning, and so until now it has functioned reasonably well.
Hmm.
And there are expectations that over a period of time this will be scaled up to a level that really benefits a large number of countries. So that, initially the funding was to the members themselves, the five countries,
Right.
but now they are providing assistance also to countries outside the grouping.
Yes.
Bangladesh being one of the countries which has actually received some assistance. I think last year in 2022, I suppose,
Right.
and there'll be other countries who will be coming in, and well, like we all know that the BRICS is actually expanded, so there will be other countries who will be lining up for to receive assistance from the new development bank.
Right. So, coming to the multilateral trade governance aspect of it, to what extent has the BRICS Forum succeeded in advocating for a more inclusive and equitable multilateral trading regime? And what obstacles has it encountered in this pursuit?
No, I would say, the performance of the BRICS has been quite bordering disappointment, as far as I'm concerned, because when the idea of the BRICS was in the horizon, that is after O'Neill's paper. At that time, the BRICS were coordinating pretty well in the WTO. China had joined the WTO in 2001, and along with India, Brazil, and South Africa, it was a formidable combination of countries which had challenged the domination of the European Union and the United States in running of the World Trade Organization.
Hmm.
And importantly, 2002 was the launch of the Doha round of negotiations,
Hmm.
and the till date, the the best kind of coordination one saw from the developing countries, coordinating with each other, forming an alliance, along with a number of other developing countries, and articulating the aspirations of the South was happening at that time. So between 2002 say, and 2007, just before the economic recession, the Great Recession, sort of uh, came, there was plenty of coordination between these countries. And for the first time, the developed countries really looked on the back foot. But after the BRICS came emerged as a forum, there have been little uh, efforts of note to change or to continue with the kind of momentum they had built in the earlier years. Uh, of course, there was articulation on the part of these countries, or the leaders of these countries, that they would like to change the multilateral trading system for the better, and so that it works better for the developing countries, a more equitable multilateral trading system, and changing the laws, amending several of the critical agreements, and doing the needful. But in terms of the real action on the ground, nothing really of note was happening at that time. Now, the Doha negotiations, as I mentioned earlier, the Doha round, we
Right.
also call it the Doha Development Agenda,
Yes.
was really a very important landmark in the whole history of the multilateral trading system,
Hmm.
because this was an agenda by the developing countries, for the developing countries, and of the developing countries. And somewhere down the line in the last decade,
Hmm.
the BRICS actually lost, the collective. This collective wasn't actually putting the pressure as well as it should. And in 2017, there was a decision taken in the Buenos Aires Ministerial Conference that there was no consensus among the WTO members to continue with the Doha round.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, just prior to that, even the BRICS countries stopped supporting the Doha round. Yeah,
Right.
and it was only South Africa and India which were still talking about the Doha round and the need to change the rules of the game. But the other three countries, somewhat, surprisingly, and this hasn't been explained till now,
Hmm.
they sort of dropped off. And now what has happened in the WTO, and this is going to be one is going
Yes.
to see this week in the 13th Ministerial Conference,
Yes.
that the whole spirit of multilateralism is got lost, and countries are now negotiating what we call plurilateral agreements. Groups of countries
Hmm.
are discussing, or on issues that interest them, not taking into consideration all the other, the entire membership.
Right.
Uh, so this is a big setback for the multilateral trading system. India and South Africa have been flagging this issue. But in the groups of countries who have been negotiating bilateral agreements, China, Russia, and Brazil are very much part of this. So I would say that in the multilateral trading system in the WTO, the BRICS are actually a divided house, and for me it's extremely unfortunate, because the presence of these five countries could have changed the WTO completely in favor of the developing countries. At least we could have gone some distance, but now it's not possible.
Right. And do you believe that plurilateralism would again shift and turn the current financial architecture significantly by sort of taking a departure from these mainstream institutions, the traditional institutions that have existed?
Yeah, I think what we need to recognize that only when the large developing countries are together and articulating a common position on behalf of the South can things happen on the larger stage. So if I think the problem has already started from the trading system,
Right.
and the lack of coordination is pretty evident, and they're not speaking as much.
Hmm.
And also, this was also seen in the financial sector. We have seen this kind of lack of coordination or a common position of the BRICS. Also, in the on the in on the debt question of low income countries.
Hmm.
Of course, there have been statements made by the leaders of the BRICS in their summit declarations to do something for resolution the debt problem of the low income countries. But in effect, nothing is happening, and we saw this in G20 as well, that we didn't see effective coordination like we see in case of OECD countries. You know, they work closely together. The G7 countries, they work closely together to back a common position. Now that is missing, and I think that is going to be an issue going forward.
Absolutely. How have the internal dynamics within the BRICS affected the forum's ability to present a unified stance on key trade issues, such as the completion of the Doha Development Agenda and the negotiations on plurilateral agreements within the WTO?
Yeah, I think there are also political differences between the countries now. You can see that, and on several issues, we are not standing together. We have problems. Sort of bilateral problems have surfaced, and this, I think, if this is not resolved, and we can't find a way of resolving bilateral issues, then given the nature of the grouping, it's a small grouping. So, and when you have the big countries, of course, many small other countries are going to join in, but these are relatively smaller countries.
Right.
And so the relations between the larger countries would actually determine the overall mood in the grouping and how the grouping actually sticks together and raises issues in unison. So I think that the first and the foremost is that we have to find a way forward from this kind of the unilateral, the sort of bilateral problems that we have, so that we can focus on what is necessary. And the large economic inequities in the global order, stemming from the global order, that is affecting the South, that can really be taken up by the BRICS, head on, and a very different global economic order is
Yes.
put in place.
Yes. And with that point, I come to the next question, which says, in what ways has the expansion of the BRICS Forum, including this addition of new member countries, influenced its ability to advance its objectives? And can it emerge, or has it already emerged as a pole in the multipolar world order?
Yeah, I think it is possible, because there are what we used to call the next BRICS, the next 10, or these kinds of countries. These countries are joining into the BRICS forum, and so the BRICS will not be a small club anymore. It is going to be going to be having more members, and there are both advantages and disadvantages of having more countries. Because given the fractured nature of global polity that we are seeing,
Hmm.
there is a danger of of bilateral problems spilling over onto this forum. Like we are already seeing this in case of the five countries, and it is very important that the BRICS is completely focused on the issues that they had first raised, has been raising, and they have to find ways of uh, not just articulating but implementing whatever they have been articulating in the forums, in the critical forums, and in the critical spaces, in case of finance, case of trade. So they'll have to find a way of doing this. So the challenge is that, of the for the breaks is not just to make certain or to take certain postures, or not to just do posturing to say that, well, we are opposed to a certain kind of global economic governance,
Right.
but really find concrete ways in which to change the global economic governance, and
Hmm.
to change the economic governance in favor of the global south.
Right.
So that remains the biggest challenge,
Hmm.
and one would only hope that this forum, the BRICS, emerges as the true voice of the South, and doesn't just look after itself, themselves, this group, but also well, the other countries in the global south, especially the weaker countries, the low income and the least developed countries.
Hmm. Just to add to that, what lessons can be learned from the experiences of the BRICS Forum in navigating the complexities of global governance and advancing the agenda of developing countries? Do you think the BRICS should reassess some of its strategies in order to keep up with the dynamically changing times?
No, I think the BRICS have been pretty much on the ball as far as articulating the problems
Hmm.
that the developing countries are facing in the global economy,
Right.
in finance and trade. But I think where the shoe is pinching is that they're not able to translate whatever they're professing. Like I said, that they're doing a lot of posturing, all right, but how to find concrete ways of implementing whatever they're saying, or
Hmm.
whatever their leaders have agreed to, or that they're agreeing to in their summit meetings, how to implement it,
Abs-
how to really make those interventions in the right kind of a manner, so
Right.
that we see real change taking place, because
Right.
that's what matters to it. We need to see real effective change,
Hmm.
get the developing countries out of the many problems that they're currently facing. And as I've been reiterating, that the inequities that they're facing in the realm of finance, in the realm of trade, and many others.
Absolutely. And I think this takes us back to one of your previous points, which says that in order to do this and in order to truly emerge as an example for the rest of the world, the BRICS also needs to sort out its internal political dynamics.
Absolutely.
Really come at a place where consensus can be achieved on the vital issues.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that note, think we can wrap up this session. Thank you so much to Professor Dhar for tuning in. Here, I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience for participating and just support to request them to support us on our social media and subscribe to our news to our website. I'd also like to take a moment to flag that if anyone's interested in reading Professor Dhar's article, it's very much available on our website. Thank you so much again, sir, for sharing all your valuable insights. And there are a lot of takeaways. And let us see how the things revolve in the near future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.